Brad, could you have envisioned that the game went the way it did after that opening Cowboys drive?
No, but that's the great thing, Sean. If I could count the number of times in all my years that a game has, first of all, gone differently than the way the opening drive went, and also went completely differently than anyone expected or that anything pointed to. It just happens. It happens a lot. And the fans of the team that it's happening to never like it. But the only thing that's important is what do you do during the course of the thing, and are you able to win? And they did. So I was surprised, but in a way I feel like I've kind of seen it before.
Yeah, we've been trying all morning just to figure out like who this team really is. Just give it to me, baby. Shoot us straight. Who is this team?
Both, everything. They're real. The Philadelphia Eagles almost lost to Indianapolis. Okay? They had to score on like their last possession. So who are they? I mean, the Eagles are clearly
they're better than the Cowboys
than everybody else. But I just don't think it's complete. I don't think this is a schizophrenic team. I think they've been pretty consistent. I do think that the one thing that I would take away from yesterday that would give me some concern is that the thing the Texans did that I don't think they expected was the Wildcat package with Jeff Driscoll, and that was like the RPO game that the Bears ran and the Eagles run, and they're going to see it again. And they didn't really practice for it, but they had some trouble with it for a while. In the second half, I think they gave up 3 points. So let's not get carried away and make the whole thing more than it is. But I think that is one thing that would give me a little bit pause, in addition, of course, to the injuries, because that changes everything. But, I mean, they fought back. They did the things they had to do to win the game, and that was not easy when you take over at the 2-yard line. And then they just asserted themselves. So it wasn't fun from a fan's point of view to watch, but from a who are they point of view, RJ, honestly, I'm not really alarmed.
Brad, do you think that anything factored into here with them looking so sloppy had anything to do with the lack of any padded practice last week?
Bobby, I think that's unknowable for those of us who don't play and coach, and it feels a little bit like overthinking, but you can't have padded practice all the time. My sense is that this staff does a really good job of planning out what they're going to do when from a practice sense. I mean, they're really detailed. They don't do anything haphazardly. And so I think that one of my favorite quotes in sports is the late, great Yogi Berra, who once, in trying to explain how something was going in baseball, said you have to remember 90% of this game is 50% mental. And those guys are human beings. They knew what the records were. The coaches can stand up there and talk to them until they're blue in the face. But those players think we're just going to go out there and win this game. We're going to try. We're not going to just roll our helmets out there. But the Texans defensively were good on paper coming in. And so you had to know that. And then they throw in the offensive wrinkle. And, all of it. Then you get Turpin fumbles a punt. Well, that's never happened. So that's a sure thing that went sideways. Now you give the other team life, and now they're in it. And that's exactly what sports is about. That's why it's fun. And you're not going to get not only the outcome, but you're not going to get the script every game that we as a fan think that ought to come. It's just not how it works. And to me, the important thing is that they found a way to win the game.
Brad Sham here on the Fan. My concern, one game, whatever. I was defending them after they lost to the Packers. My concern is we're having like this type of discussion after 3 straight games. Halftime against the Giants and 3 quarters against Indy, and then yesterday to the very, very end. Is that reasonable to have that concern after 3 straight games of these types of performances to wake up?
Oh, I think that you're a reasonable fella, Sean, but I would just say that I don't share that concern. You play 60 minutes, and the only thing that matters is what happens at the end. And just because you and I think that they should dominate this team from, as they used to say, from gun to whistle, that's just not how it works in the NFL. And so the other team hangs around, and then you find a way to win. So, and in a divisional game, I think it's really even more unpredictable because those are always closer because teams know each other and there's a little more emotion. So I would not call you unreasonable, but I would say I don't share that concern based on those 3 games.
Who was your player of the game?
Well, that's a good one. I'd really have to think about that, but I would probably. That's a good one. I don't know for sure.
Well, let's talk about
Van Der Esch.
Okay,
He had 16 tackles, and he was strong at the point of attack, and I didn't see anything he did wrong.
Also, speak to Jason Peters, Brad. I heard you in the post game say that he's had absolutely 0 reps sitting there at right tackle. It looks like there's some concern that they think Steele is gone for the year. What'd you think of the job that Peters did and how this offensive line is going to look moving forward?
Well, I am really anxious. It's really a little early for the tape to be up to have access to it, but I'm going to be doing that this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. And I'm also interested in seeing how Josh Ball did besides the one play where he clearly got beat and caused an interception because he might have been functional. I don't know that. Peters is, if he had never taken a snap, what he did mentally to help Tyler Smith from the day he walked in the door, he was worth whatever they're paying him. Now, my understanding is that they talked to him when Steele got hurt about going to right tackle, and he at first said, I don't want to hurt the team. I don't want to be the reason we lose because I haven't practiced over there. And then after the interception and the late pressure that he went back over and said, put me in. And he's a real competitor. Here's just a thought. I've talked to no one about this. It's just in my head. What if Tyron plays right tackle?
And who would play left tackle? Tyler?
Tyler Smith's been playing the hell out of left tackle all year. When they were talking about Tyron coming back, a lot of people were saying, why would you move Tyler Smith? I thought, well, you don't have to. McGovern's been playing well. I'm not. You don't want to mix and match, and they don't have a lot of time to turn this around. Tyron played right tackle his rookie year. Now, that's longer ago than 2005, I think. No, it's not, but it feels like it, when Peters came in the league. And, they may have to do it by committee, but I'm sure that's kept some of them up last night. If Steele is done, and we hear the same rumors, and it's all rumors until they say it, but if he's done for the rest of the way, then I think it's reasonable to say what is your best offensive line. Now, my hesitancy about moving Tyron would be the same thing it was about moving Peters, because I talked to Zach about it afterwards, and I said, how about the difficulty of what Peters did? He said, I think going from one side to the others is the hardest thing to do. Now, don't overreact to this because I don't like the idea of where it leads people to think. But Zach Martin said, I would rather move from right guard to right tackle than right guard to left guard. Now, I don't think they've got another guard right now who can approximate what you would get from Martin. So I think you have to throw that idea out because I think it would really compromise the interior. And the communication lately, for the most part, has been really good between both guards or all three if you want to throw Tyler Smith in for when he moves in and the center. So I'm not for that idea, but the point is someone who knows a lot more about it says moving from one side to another is not easy. But if anyone can do that, guys like Jason Peters and Tyron Smith would be those guys. And when we talk to McCarthy this afternoon, I'll be a little surprised if he doesn't say they're considering all options.
Brad, Dak was a little bit inconsistent, or maybe you didn't think he was. But how was your evaluation of his game, and do you look at it like, man, maybe he was just a little bit too inconsistent and is a little too inconsistent, or like that 98-yard drive is why they pay him $40 million?
Both things are true, in my opinion. I didn't think he was really very good throughout most of the day. There were a few throws, RJ, that I don't know. There was one on a third down where the ball was just short, and I said to Babe on the air, "What is wrong with him today? What's going on?" Some days, you have a bad day at the office. I didn't think he was sharp overall. I don't blame him for the interceptions. The first one, I believe, got tipped just before it got to Noah Brown. And then, I thought Brown fought the ball. It hit him off the numbers, and I thought that was a catchable ball. And then there were a couple of others that were dropped, and the protection was the cause of the second interception. But there were some other throws that were just not – they just weren't smooth. They just didn't look great. And then the guy who took over at the 2, that was the guy that you would like to see all the time. Now, I don't think there's a quarterback in the league who hits 100% of his passes. But I did think that he was a little inconsistent for a good part of the day until he absolutely could not be, and then he was just magic. I thought some of those throws, a couple of those throws to Schultz were some of the best throws that he made all day. So I think both of those things are true.
You guys have any discussions over the pass rush? Seeing, I know that they were running a little bit with their college system that they were going at with the alternating quarterbacks, but where was the pass rush yesterday?
It's a great question, and we didn't really have time to talk about it, but we did mention it. I mean, there wasn't any, and especially when they had to throw and they left Davis Mills in, who, by the way, I think is a little underrated. I'm not saying he's the next great thing, but Davis Mills throws the ball well, and if he's got some weapons around him, I think he's a more than serviceable quarterback. But yeah, there was a complete absence of a pass rush yesterday. It may be that it's just really hard to get in sync doing that when the offense is doing what it's doing and you're going from playing RPO to standard pass rush from one play to the next. Might be hard to get in a groove. I've never done it, but there were absolutely times when I thought to myself, if I didn't say, okay, this is where the pass rush comes in, and that didn't happen. So, and that was an anomaly. So it was not a good part of the game, but I'm not going to panic over it.
Player show tonight?
Yes, and we were going to have Jake Ferguson until he got himself into the concussion protocol. But we will have Damian Clark, and I'm really looking forward to having everybody meet this young man because he's going to be a big star, and he's already playing a huge role in their defense, and I think he's made it better and added an element in just the last few weeks that he's been playing. So, yeah, I think that he'll be a fun one for everybody to see. Cane Rosso in the Star District in Frisco.
Thank you, Bradley. Appreciate it.
Have a great Monday, boys.
Top 3 Cowboy players right now, 877-881-1053. And Kevin, you can't...
Steve DeBerg.
Hell yeah. Reggie, that's what I'm talking about.
Thanks, man.
What?
No.
You can't say Micah.
Ooh.
Why?
Okay. No, number 1 is off my list then. All right. Back to the drawing board. I'm going to need another one.
I'll throw mine out there to kind of level this for you. Number 3 for me, Zach Martin. Like his consistency at his position and like sheer dominance there. He's just so good. Number 2 for me is DeMarcus Lawrence. DeMarcus Lawrence is a beast in the run stopping whenever it comes his direction. I also like it. There's more. We'll talk about Mike in a minute. I think that this is the best we've seen him in a long time. And I think maybe now because we do get other pass rush from other places, maybe people are starting to respect what DeMarcus Lawrence's like skill set and abilities actually are. When he was playing in the past, you're like, well, he didn't get 15 sacks. It's like, well, I mean, he's really good at all these other things, but the team had no other players that could do those other things. So it was like, well, it's on you, DeMarcus, to do this stuff. And I think now you're seeing like what he's really good at. And you're really lucky to have him on this team. He saved the game here. Number one for me is
Can I ask you real quick about DeMarcus Lawrence?
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out here as a question. Do you think that he's getting to shine more because he's not as high on the scouting report as Micah Parsons is? So
big possibility.
For, like, let's say the last 3 or 4 years of his career, it's like, stop DeMarcus Lawrence, double DeMarcus Lawrence, make DeMarcus Lawrence's life miserable.
He's the only thing on that defense that can hurt us.
After half of a season of Micah Parsons as a rookie, it started transitioning to Micah's the guy we have to double. Micah is the guy we have to really watch out for. And then that frees him up to get more one-on-one matchups.
And I do think in addition to that, and I'll get to that in a moment too, Mike. I do think also some better interior, like Osa Odigizua, I think helps a lot. Like interior defensive line, whenever they can create pressure, that helps what your outside guys have to do as well. Like some of the matchups that they get, because you can't just double team DeMarcus Lawrence and phase him out. Because if you do that, Osa can get to you. So there's lots of other those in this defense that I think we finally built a better defense. So then my number one is Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard has now become my favorite. Those are my top 3 Cowboys right now. I love Tony Pollard.
That aren't Micah.
Yeah, that aren't Micah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to reset that because I'm like, if that's back in play, I'm going to say Micah.
Yeah, Micah's just in a different category, but I do have a Micah question here. But yeah, Tony Pollard, he got a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown in this game, I do believe. Am I wrong about that?
The first 2 touchdowns were his.
So they're like that's, and again, Mike, that rushing touchdown he had to open the game, 15 yards out, like he gets out to the edge and then says, okay, I'm upfield, and boom, he's gone. It's just, he is a different speed that allows for this Cowboys team to do a lot of different things offensively.
Terrence Steele leading the charge on that one?
Yeah.
I can't remember because we had a guy out in front of him that did a great job. And Tony Pollard's super fast, does a great job in space. My guy Mark Sanchez talked about that. He's my new favorite guy. I'm like, man, he should do more Cowboy games. I know he won't because he's not the A team, and usually you don't get those type of
B team
of guys. So, I think Tony Pollard is a good choice.
Good blocking.
Leaving
Noah
out
Brown
Micah,
too.
I think, is a good choice.
Noah Brown had some good blocking too in the running game.
Assuming no Micah, I will go Zach Martin 1, Trayvon Diggs 2, and Tony Pollard 3.
Okay, all right. You have Pollard in your top 3. That's interesting.
I had Tank at 4. I think he's been playing very, very well, but I think I'm going to go with that.
Diggs got another interception. Is that why you have him
No,
there?
I mean, if that didn't count for him, and he's like, come on, NFL, let's make it happen. He's looking at that next deal.
I got half sacks. Where's my half interception?
But also, he got the fumble recovery, and you just see more and more how much teams stay away from him. Now, that might also be in part because they're like, hey, let's go attack the young guy or the younger guy, because Trayvon Diggs is still pretty young. But, yeah, I feel pretty good about that. Martin, Diggs, Pollard.
I'm interested as a question to you guys.
Ask it.
So when they throw out all the numbers on this is the best offense in the NFL as long as Dak is under center, and you guys did not rank Dak in your top 4 because you have to, Micah's 1, and then you guys rated the next 3. And so you guys did a list of 4 Cowboys, and neither one of you listed Dak, and you said Dak is better than Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, but he's not playing better than Jalen Hurts right now.
But all the numbers suggest that he kind of is. I know the turnovers aren't. I don't get me wrong there, but the overall offense led by Dak has all of these premium numbers. And I'm kind of with you guys because I was struggling on putting Dak 3rd on my list. I had the exact same list as Kevin. I had Martin, Diggs, and then I was thinking about putting Dak there. And when he didn't put Dak there, and I thought Tony Pollard's a great choice. I think DeMarcus Lawrence is a good choice. I think those are good choices, but it's just interesting to me that Dak has those team statistics, and yet you guys aren't really considering him in your top 3.
Yeah, I would probably put Dak 5th then, in that area. I think Tony Pollard adds such an explosive scoring threat to the offense. That element of it is, and also I think that kind of goes with expectation too. Like we said earlier, expectation for Terrence Steele was, probably maybe a C, and then he played above that, and you're like A+, and then you're like, well, the reality is he's probably a B, maybe a B+, something like that. And with Tony Pollard, I really didn't expect that they'd use him right. I never did, and now that they are, he's doing everything we said that he would.
And I think I looked at it from the perspective of like how good you are at your position. Like I think Zach Martin is one of the absolute best at his position. Same for Diggs. For Tony Pollard, he's 8th in the league in rushing for running backs. Now, obviously, he's also behind Justin Fields. So he's 9th overall in rushing. He has the 2nd fewest carries in that bunch, behind only Justin Fields, who's obviously been electric running the ball. And so I think he has just been remarkable at his position. So at best, I would put Dak at 5th, and that's also not including Micah. And then I would have to think about that a little harder.
Well, we have 12, is it 12 touchdowns from Pollard?
Total, yes.
Like that's his ability to score and where he gets the ball and the ability to score from, like he's averaging 9.6 yards per reception.
So I love what you guys are doing because I didn't know this. I had to click on it because of all the stats they show on how Dak is the great. Like they do. I mean, I get it. They're pumping up the Cowboys. Yeah. They're pumping up Dak.
Dak's the leader of the offense. Yeah.
Don't look this up. Just guess, please, for me, is QBR. Dak is in what QBR? Like, is he first in QBR? Is he 30th in QBR? Where would you put him in QBR? Because that takes out – he can't accumulate stats this year because of missing the games.
I will have to admit,
15.
See, I was going to say I thought I had seen this last week. I wonder how much he fell. I think 15 is probably pretty close because I think he was 12th last week or something like that.
19th.
Okay.
Yikes.
He is just behind Andy Dalton and just ahead of Ryan Tannehill. Now, I know he's better than those guys. I just found that interesting because of all of these numbers we're saying Dak is leading us to, and you would think QBR, just to give you an idea, who are the top 5 in QBR? Patrick Mahomes, to a T, who did not have a good game last night. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Geno Smith, Reggie's guy. Top 5 QBRs. Now, I know QBR is not perfect. There's different.
Can I tell you something about that? I had this discussion with somebody about Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts has an overall much better QBR than Dak. One of the things that's amazing about that is Dak has 2 games against the Vikings and the Bears that are better than any QBR that Hurts has posted up all season. But
he also has some that are worse.
Yeah. Like yesterday, it was 23.9, which is abysmal. Even
Probably
the week
opening
before
week was horrible, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
That he had like a 3.
Yeah, that was awful as well. And so you have seen, and the Packers one, I'm sure, wasn't that great. So the heights of Dak have been amazing. However, even the mediocrity has been not so great.
I had no clue about Dak. I thought for sure with the points per game that he would be top 10. I wasn't expecting him to be top 3, don't get me wrong, but I was like, all right, I'm going to click on this and he's going to be top 10. I get he can't be in touchdowns or yards because of missing so many games, missing the 5 games.
Don't the interceptions hurt in QBR also?
Absolutely.
Pretty significantly.
Well, and then the other thing is,
and I'm not killing him for interceptions right now.
13th because I'm taking out Brian Hoyer, who is 5 of 6. Okay. So everybody else has played in, honestly, 10 or more games except for Dak, who has 8, and he is 13th in that, just behind Aaron Rodgers, just ahead of Daniel Jones.
And that will make his QBR swing more too, because like I said, before this game, he was 12th, and he did not have a good game, and he fell all the way to 19th. So even at 12th, you guys did a good job
keeping him off the list. I was wrong. I should have him way off the list too.
Well, I don't think you can do it. It's your list.
It doesn't have to be way.
Well, I had Martin, Diggs, and Dak. But I thought, I did think DeMarcus Lawrence has had a very good year. I can't put Van Der Esch there, even though he's had a very good year.
Yeah, he is.
And
I thought, CeeDee Lamb, somebody was like, y'all are sleeping on CD, but yeah, Pollard.
Oh, yeah, and you know what, CeeDee Lamb,
and then
too.
How much do you think his overall statistics are impacted by the defense? Like, for example, when we talked about points and margin of victory, some of that comes via the defense either scoring themselves or all the turnovers. I told you they're 2nd in the league, putting him in advantageous situations.
Yeah, man, it's an interesting team right now that you have a lot of different names. You have a lot of different names up in an area where you're like, oh, I didn't expect that.
Do you think that would work as a segment? The Cowboys are interesting. Why?
Yeah,
because I bet we would get like
50
million different answers for why they're interesting.
How a large part, probably 10% of them are because in the last 25 years.
I know.
Other storylines from Victory. I think keeping things in perspective, as disappointing as it was, They got the win, and that's nice. And it's the first time they've had double-digit wins in back-to-back seasons since 1996. 26 years. I think it's a direct result of their game plan and what they show up, to do. I think you've seen now here recently what happens if you don't have the right game plan. And if the Cowboys showed up to pass that much, this might be a team under 500 right now. I firmly believe that. So I do want to give credit, though, to Mike McCarthy. And I think this pretty much locks him in to, next year and probably beyond. This is a significant accomplishment for a really inconsistent franchise to do this, Brian.
I don't know many teams that could survive being without their quarterback for 5 weeks and go 4-1. The 49ers are about to kind of figure that out, and we'll see how that plays out. But when you start to talk about guys the Coach of the Year honors and things, I think Mike McCarthy deserves absolutely credit. I think that whole thing with Dak not being out, Gavin, you mentioned it. Like, you go back and looking like, hey, guys used to win games running the ball, protecting the ball, playing great defense, and that's a great recipe. If you can get all those things to kind of come together, that's all you really need. That's really, to be honest with you, that's how San Francisco is going to get in the playoffs, and that's how they're going to play really good run defense. They're going to play good defense overall. Their quarterback, is he's going to do what he's asked to do. They're going to run the football, and that's how they're going to win. And so, there's nothing wrong with that. I guarantee if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were, right now, they'd give anything for a running game. Yeah. They would give anything not to expose Tom Brady as much as they've had to throwing the football. Teams that have that balance, and I'm not talking 50-50 balance. I'm just talking about the ability not to have to put the ball up a bunch of times. They've done a great job with the penalties here so far. They've done a great job with running the football. They haven't done a good enough job with the turnovers. It hasn't killed them, but man, it does. You're just ready.
You've been playing crappy teams.
Yeah, that's the thing about it is you're getting away. Good teams create interceptions and fumbles and that stuff too. You've got to find a way. And if Dak is going to stay aggressive, I'm cool. Dak aggressive, cool, no problem. But make sure you're mindful of when you take that aggressiveness. I guess it's not being aggressive if you're being mindful about it, but I think you have to be a little bit more focused on what you need to do in order to keep him from getting those turnovers.
Well, yesterday, not only was it the turnovers, but 11 tipped passes.
Yeah.
Look at this stat. Texans defenders tipped 11 of the 39. No previous game this season had featured more than 6 passes defensed, though Prescott has now had at least 4 passes defensed in 4 of the Cowboys' last 5 games. Yeah. That's huge. Nobody else is getting balls tipped like this. Everybody in the NFL is keeping it under 6, and he's had at least 4 in 5 games in a row. What's going on there, Brian? What's contributing to the tipped passes?
Well, I'll tell you what. When you look at yesterday, I think we've mentioned the clog and cover stuff that teams have played. I think the Texans did a really good job of, getting to their area, getting to their spot, and then when they read the ball being thrown, hands up, or guys driving on the play. I mean, their safeties played well yesterday. We talk about all the cover 2 stuff they had. Linebackers drops in a cover 2 defense. You have to defend the middle of the field. They did a good job of handling all that. So yeah, and to be honest with you, there was a pass that was tipped early in the game. One of their defensive linemen got the ball. They were trying to throw the ball underneath the Gallup. And to be honest with you, the ball got tipped at the line of scrimmage, incomplete. If the ball gets through, it's probably intercepted. That's the kind of, but it didn't get through. It got tipped, got knocked out of the way. So, yeah, teams are kind of figuring out if you can't get the Dak hands up, but they're also driving on these corners and safeties, and linebackers are driving on these routes and making it contested, plays. A lot of the time the ball coming out there, if it comes late, you're going to give those secondary and linebackers an opportunity to get to you and knock those balls down.
Other storylines from victory. Salute to Zeke. He's rushed for a touchdown in 6 straight games now, which is incredible considering how much he's been sharing it He joins Emmitt Smith and Tony Dorsett as the only 3 players in team history with a rushing touchdown in 6 consecutive games. The last Cowboy with a rushing score in at least 6 straight games was Emmitt's 11-game touchdown streak in 1995.
Yeah, and, you would like to think, I wish he could have got that last one in on 4th down, but, the Texans did a great job of kind of coming from the backside there and making that play, taking care of that particular tackle right there.
With the touchdown in the 4th, Zeke passed Bob Hayes for the 3rd most overall scores in team history. Only Dorsett with 86 and Emmitt Smith at 164 have more touchdowns in Cowboys history. How about Noah Brown? He had a great start to the season when Michael Gallup was out. It's been silent for a while, but yesterday he caught the 4 passes for 85 yards, the 2nd most receiving yards in his career behind the 91-yard performance against the Bengals on September 18th. Is he the overlooked man here, Brian? I mean, are you sure that T.Y. Hilton is going to be better than this guy?
I think what I think about Noah Brown is all week long, maybe for the last couple of weeks, he's had to hear nothing but Odell Beckham, Odell Beckham, Odell Beckham, And Noah Brown, everybody was going to okay, what's going to happen to Noah Brown when they get Odell Beckham? Is he going to go back to being special teams guy and all that? I think the thing with Noah Brown is I think he's super competitive. I think he's super tough. I think he's really underrated, though, as a wide receiver. I know the interception and all that. Like I say, I think Dak got fooled on that. Ball got knocked up in the air. But, man, when Noah Brown won the Cincinnati game for you with 5 targets, 5 receptions. You look at what he was able to do yesterday and how they were able to take advantage. I mean, he got the ball down there where they were able to, to drive it in to get the game-winning touchdown. So he made several plays along the way. And then that 51-yard pass coming back to the football, when it looked like that everything was kind of covered up down the field. I mean, he continues to make plays for you as a guy that really nobody wants to give any credit to.
What did you make of today's performance of the Dallas Cowboys, given the amount of struggles they had with the Texans today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm just finishing up my post-game stories for y'all. I'm still at the stadium, actually, about to file. And I think that 2 things can be true. One is that for the first 3.5 quarters, even a little bit more of that, the Cowboys did not do what they needed to do. They turned over the ball 4 times. They didn't get any sacks on defense, only had 1 quarterback hit, and really were just doing everything that if you say, if all of this happened, you lose the game. Now, 2, keep this in mind, a 1-win Houston Texans team at the Cowboys' home. Now, on the other hand, you could say, with 4 minutes left, they got a goal line stop on defense. They had 4 straight stops after the Cowboys had turned the ball over at the 4-yard line, so they have this really short field for Houston. And then the offense comes and they go 98 yards in under 3 minutes. Dak looks great. It's the same coverages, similar play calls, and we're like, wait, well, now the passing game works, and instead of throwing it to get tipped off the Texans defenders, you're actually meeting your guys. And they had that comeback win, which has a bunch of guys said after the game, you need to be able to win. And I was just looking at the stat where there's been 63 games before this week in which a team tied or won after trailing in the 4th quarter. 63 comebacks this season, which was the most through 13 weeks in the NFL. And so I think both are true, that the Cowboys flex this muscle of a comeback that they need, and they also showed a lot of areas of weakness that you have to expect teams, including the Eagles, to exploit.
Totally agree with that. And as a matter of fact, I was saying earlier, this is the kind of game that coaches love. A win, but they had all these errors in it that they could just chew out the players over. They could just, this is what you need to do. We got to do this. We got to be. In other words, they got their attention. And the players, I like the way they won it at the end, as opposed to they were raggedy the whole way through, or they gave up some late touchdown, or there was a pick that cost them the game, or something that was just absolutely crazy that made this game a win, but it was just an awful win. That's what I take out of that. In other words, I see some things that they can take from it. The fact that the defense got the stop at the end and the offense did a 98-yard drive. In other words, they took the game as opposed to it fell in their lap and they were lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember after the Thanksgiving win against the Giants, Dan Quinn said, I think there was a late score that the Giants had in what was essentially garbage time. And Dan said from the booth before he even got to the locker room, he's like, I was really happy that happened. It is annoying that we didn't hold off the game, but now I know, hey, this is something I need to remind these guys about the finish. And this game was that for 56 minutes or so. And so I think you're totally right. Now, I think that there are some very clear issues, and the number one is definitely Dak Prescott, the turnovers, and that erratic passing game. And Dak will tell you that himself, and he did tell us that himself. I mean, the forcefulness with which he said, this isn't okay, it will never be okay, and I promise you guys I'll fix it. For him to have 9 interceptions in 8 games, I mean, that's just far above his career high, which was 0.8 interceptions back in 2017. To average more than 1 a game, it's really difficult to win in the playoffs. Now, I like that he's being more aggressive. I think that the same throws they're getting intercepted on, they're having great success in key moments, and that's kind of the Jekyll and Hyde aspect here, but they need to be a little more on the same page between Dak and his receivers.
Jori Epstein, senior NFL reporter for Yahoo Sports, joining us via the Diamond Factory hotline here on the Specs Cowboys postgame show. Obviously, as we look at this team, Jori, we try to evaluate this team, I think, in the context of what they could be as a Super Bowl contender. When you see performances like this, does it give you pause when you evaluate this team in the context of whether or not they are truly one of the upper echelon teams of the NFL and what that means for their chances going forward?
Yeah, I think it has to give you pause. I mean, look, Lovie Smith, the Texans coach, who just almost upset a 17.5-point favorite, was like, I told Mike McCarthy after the game, they have just as good of a chance to win it as anyone else. And I'm like, that's great, Lovie. Then how come you almost beat them when you have no chance to win it? And then you go over to what the Eagles just did against the Giants. And again, the Eagles are the best team in the NFC right now, and it's not really close. And they beat the Giants 48-22 today at the Giants' home. And the Giants are a decent team. They're not a great team, but they're a decent team. And so you see that they had 7 sacks against Daniel Jones. I mean, that's what you call dominating the game. And even last week, yes, the Cowboys ultimately had a blowout, but it wasn't a dominant game. As Jack said, like the Minnesota game when they won 40-3 and they really got that lead from the beginning, that was a complete complimentary game. Now we're seeing these games where they're kind of like hanging around, they're not getting started as quickly as they can, and then they turn it on at the end. Well, there comes a time when it's too late to turn it on.
Can you talk about a couple of injuries that we found out about late in the game and after the game? Terrence Steele and Anthony Hankins, and how much of an effect this should have on the team down the stretch here?
Yeah, Terrence Steele, so he's got that knee injury, and I had talked to someone after the game, and they said, we have to wait until tomorrow to get the full report on it, but not good was the words I got. So I don't know if it's an ACL, if it's an MCL. I don't know what it was in that left knee. It appeared that they were evaluating, but it definitely seems he'll miss some time, and how much time will be a question. Now, they put Josh Ball in there at first at right tackle. That was a disaster might be strong, but it went pretty poorly. And Dak's second interception, the interception that set up the Texans for a 4-yard field, he got hit on his right side off of Josh Ball. And then they brought in Jason Peters, who had played much more on the left side in his career, the veteran who they signed, longtime Eagles guy, Chicago last year. And that actually worked a lot better, and that's who was there on the game-winning drive. So Jerry Jones did confirm to us after the game that they will not be moving Tyler Smith or Tyron Smith over to the right side. Those are left side players for the team to the right. Now, Jonathan Hankins, I believe it's a tech. He's their kind of nose tackle, their run stuffer. It's a little bit early to say what the final is on that, too. So there were definitely some injuries. But when you look around the league today, and I mean, it seems every week now, and all things considered, the Cowboys at this stage of the year are healthier than most teams.
Agreed.
Jori, before we let you go, what is going to be, in your mind, the overarching talking point for this team as they get ready to take on Jacksonville next Sunday?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the passing game and just getting it rhythmic is going to be really important. That's probably like line one for me. The passing game being rhythmic and the pass rush on the opposite side. And I think both of those come down to in the trenches play as well. I think Tyron Smith is likely to return the All-Pro left tackle next week. I mean, I expect him to be on a pitch count when he returns. And then it's really interesting because who's at left guard? And I know that sounds a little like, oh, why are we talking about the trenches and not who's going to score, who's going to get the sack, who's going to fumble. But having that offensive line intact is so key for what this offense is going to be able to do. And the Cowboys are in this tough spot of how do you get the offensive line where you want it without messing up Dak and the offensive rhythm. So that's really what I'll be looking for at Jacksonville, and just how can you get some of these pieces that are returning from injury ready to go so that when the Eagles come to town on Christmas Eve in 2 weeks, you're ready for them. And you know that whether it's a win or a loss, they're probably not catching them in the NFC East, but that will be as close as you can get to playoff level competition and an understanding of how ready you are for the postseason.
Quick question. It's not as big as a story as it was a week ago at this time, but would you be surprised if OBJ made a decision this week, and would you think it would be the Cowboys?
Chris, with all due respect, made a decision, I think, suggests he has one to make. I think the question is...
I like it.
That's good.
I think the question is, does he have one to make? Now, what I can tell you is that when Jerry was asked tonight if they were done talking with OBJ, he said, no, period, exclamation mark, like, we are not done with this conversation. That's all I'm going to say. It's a fun story, and it's been a lot of hype to cover, but I think there does get to a point where I'm not super convinced that at the pace he's ready to come back, even if he's able to play in the postseason. Well, this isn't like last year. Like, yeah, he came and totally crushed it with the Rams last year. He had been playing for Cleveland all season. He was in football shape, and then he had 7 or 8 weeks with the Rams before the postseason came to get ready for the playbook. And again, Baker Mayfield on Thursday totally showed that maybe you only need 2 days for a playbook. So who am I to say that Odell can't figure it out in a couple of weeks? But I do not think that Odell currently is a better option than what they have in this receiver room. So could we find out something this week? Possibly. Do I think it's extremely possible he doesn't play until next season? Yeah, I think so. Or maybe he gets something to hang around. And even we saw a guy like Von Miller who had this great start to the year in Buffalo, and now he's on injured reserve with the ACL, had that season-ending surgery. So I think when you get to that age with that injury history, you can't rely on them even if you hope that they can add something.
Agreed.